Author is funded by the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, supporting writers from pen to publication since 1955. To learn more about the PNWA and their yearly conference, please go to pnwa.org. Hi, this is Bill Kenower of Author Magazine, and today I'm here at the University Bookstore in Seattle, Washington with Colleen J. McElroy, author of Here I Throw Down My Heart. Colleen, welcome to Author.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, so Colleen, I'm talking to you now, I've just discovered after quite a traumatic event in your life. You've just recovered from a stroke that happened 3 weeks ago as of this filming. Which actually leads me to one of the first things that struck me about reading the first portion of the collection of poems, which seemed to me, I don't know if you intended it this way, but they were dealing very much, as I read them,
with the body. With Oh, yes.
Was that very much on your mind?
Yes. I've lived long enough to go through several careers, and one of those careers was a dancer. But you know, the body only allows you to do physical things for so long, and then it simply says we have to stop now. And so I've always been interested in how mentally you have this image of yourself, but physically it's a different image. And also, of course, because I am Black and female, how people have a mental image, or in their heads they have an image of who I am. But I have a completely different image. And there's also the private image and the public image. We all have the duality of how we present ourselves in public as opposed to how we present ourselves privately.
And there's the public self and the private self, and then there's almost a deeper private self, which is the artistic self. I feel like that you go that almost one step further, or do you not? Or do you feel it's more fluid?
No, it's true. It's true. There's the private self that is sort of on the surface, and then there's I guess I would describe the private self on the surface as the go-to. That's the one where, when you're in a situation, you say, "What is this?" And the private self says, "This is." But then there's a deeper self that says, "Oh, you gotta be kidding me, it can't be." and that deeper self sees connections in ways that the private self doesn't. For example, this is a recent example, when I was in the ER, and they take you to, get the CAT scan and the MRI and all that. And I heard people talking, and one of the things I repeatedly heard was, "Does she have a ticket to ride?" Because what they want is that piece of paper that says this patient is being transferred here. They don't want you in the sub-basement in the hallway and nobody knows where you are. But every time they would say, "Does she have a ticket to ride?" in my head I was saying, "And she don't care."
How are you not going to think of that song? Do you consider yourself as much a storyteller as just a poet? Or do you consider yourself within the form of poetry a storyteller anyway?
I became a storyteller long before I became a poet. My mother had many sisters, and they would gather in my grandmother's house. And this was during World War II, so the men were all fighting. And they would tell stories about everybody. And I learned how to listen to those stories, to figure out what was going on. And my father was in the service, so we moved around a bit. And when I would come back to St. Louis, I would tell stories about where I had been. And I told them so well that some of the kids didn't believe them at all. But they were true. Because I see the surreal of an event, of a situation, which makes it seem beyond reality, but it is reality, Sometimes I despair because something happens, and as I said, here I am without my camera, because it's hard to record it on the spot. And so I think I started remembering the details of it, not just the thing itself. When people say to me, to make a long story short, I get upset. Don't make it short. It's never been short.
Right.
If you make the long story short, you don't have a story.
A couple of writers I've spoken to have said they don't know what they know until they write it.
Oh, yes.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah. Oh,
Strange to
definitely.
think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so for someone who's not a writer, explain how's that possible? How can you not know it? You know it. You're you.
Well, I started writing, and I think I'm going to write about it in this way,
Yeah.
and it doesn't come out that way.
Right.
And sometimes I'll write 2 or 3 lines. If I can get a good title that I may even have to let go of later,
Right.
then it can direct me for a little while. But I don't have a clue as to where it's going. You know, all I know is whatever I'm thinking, I have to get put down on the page. It used to be that I could hold an entire poem in my head before I wrote it.
Really?
Yeah, but that was a long time ago.
You know, the more I do it, the more I talk to people who are doing it, the more I see it as a relationship. I used to see it as an activity, but I've come to see it as a relationship, that it's the closest thing it's to, even though I'm the only one there.
Yeah.
Do you see it that way, or am I the only one?
Well, for me, poetry is a kind of affair.
Affair?
Yes.
That's a relationship.
It has its drawbacks, you know. Sometimes it's not going to do what you want it to do. Sometimes you feel that it's betraying you, especially when it wants to go off on its own, regardless what you thought you were doing. But it is so full of instinct and passion that you can't walk away from it. You know, I would tell my students, if you can stop writing now, do it.
Right, because you probably shouldn't be doing it.
That's right, you shouldn't be doing it. You don't write because you want to blah, blah, blah. You write because you have no choice. I don't know of a poet who sits down and thinks, I'm going to win the Pulitzer, you know, or this book will move me up on the corporate ladder. That's not going to happen. And in fact, I know few fiction writers, few novelists who think in that way. What they want is a good book. They want a book that speaks to that moment or that series of moments. They want a book that says, this made me feel good. Even when it's sad, this made me feel good. I had to do it. In terms of those poems about my stroke, I have to keep telling myself, you're not writing this because you want anyone's sympathy. You're not writing this because you're exploiting something that happened to you, was out of your control. You're writing this because it is a way for you to lie comfortably with it.
I have just one more little question for you. And what I'd like you to do is finish the sentence for me. If writing has taught me anything, it's taught me what?
Patience.
Oh, patience.
Patience, yes. Yes.
Patience with the word, patience with everything.
Patience with my own emotions. I can't let my feelings stand between me and the piece of writing. Sometimes I'm in great despair because I'm not getting it, especially when I'm writing fiction. Fiction just wears me out. But it has taught me patience. And that was a long time coming. But I know I can write a piece and put it away and go back to it months from now and say, oh, that's pretty good, you know, or figure out what's wrong with it and what needs to happen. The patience to know when you have tinkered with it enough, when you have polished it enough, that it's time to let it go out in the world and find its own path.